On that note, I wanted to continue what we talked about last Sunday. And again, a lot of people already texted, emailed, and told us that it's a very encouraging message that, it sounds so. I'm just lifting myself, and I hate doing that. But this is just me sharing to you what people said about the message, about a biblical perspective about love, and I think during the break, series break, sermon break last Sunday, and this is essential because I believe that's why I did that, is because we have this just idea about love that I think it's not biblical anymore.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Because it's been a fake, to be honest with you. That's why the points where true love is, because again, there's just that fake love that the enemy is selling to us. Mm-hmm. And the sad part is that a lot of Christians have been partaking and believing this fake understanding or a non-biblical understanding of what love is all about.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I felt like, February 14, Valentine's Day, and that alone, I'm going to talk about that a bit later, about Saint Valentine, actually. Mm-hmm. And we have lost that. I mean, this guy, loves the Lord, who's an act of love to people. We should be celebrating, really, and not all of this whole, hearts and small angels, with diapers flying with some arrows, and and everybody's praying that they're gonna be hit by that arrow, and they're gonna be love struck and stuff like that, and some, chocolates, and some people also committing some adultery and immorality and sleeping because in the name of love. Mm-hmm. So that's so sad, to be honest with you, okay, if you ask me. So now today I'm gonna go take this a little bit more in a different perspective, as we talk about love, and for us to understand it more deeply. Mm-hmm. And for this, I wanted you to open your Bible to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And I alluded to this a little bit last Sunday, but I wanted to go deeper a little bit more. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1, and of course this is the Apostle Paul, after talking about spiritual gifts, and we just one body with many parts, and now he starts by saying this in verse 1. And this is interesting, and I think what I'm going to share to you today is something that my professor, Dr. Dangle, when I was studying, and he wrote this book, Holy Love, and if you could get a copy, I think I would recommend you should. It's a little bit deep reading, but it's exciting. Just an understanding of this love, and I think that I never saw it before. I'm reading this verse so many times, but yet I've never seen it in this perspective. Of course, a biblical perspective. It says, "If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbals." Again, the key word that I have not love. Also, here's what he said: "If I have the gift of prophecy," that's in verse 2, "and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have not," says, "and I have a faith that can move mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing." Again, this is interesting from the Apostle Paul. And then he continues in verse 3, "If I give all I possess to the poor, and surrender my body to the flames, but I have not love, I gain nothing." I want you to go to verse 1. Look at this. "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels." It's talking about some great, that you could speak in tongues and speak of tongues of men, and that means that you're learned, and not only that the heavenly, the baptism of the Holy Spirit, people are empowered, and the indwelling produces that speaking of different language. I think Paul was saying that in both, but yet he says, "But I have not love." So that means, here's what it is, and I was talking about this a little bit last Sunday, is that most of the time we say that love is a verb. That love is a verb. It's an action. It's yes, but also we have to be careful. Because not necessarily, if you ask me. Because when you look at this, I want to share this. It's a disposition. It's coming from the heart. It's a decision before it becomes an action. Because according to the Apostle Paul, here's what it is. Actually, you could do a lot of actions or expressions of love, but yet not possess love. Look at this. "If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but have not love." So that means it's possible to move in such spiritual giftings, but yet in the absence of love. Say, I am only a resounding gong, a clanging cymbal. Look at this from verse 2. If I have the gift of prophecy, and again, people wanted those great gifts, and can fathom all mysteries. That means, you're like Daniel. Because when I look at that, Daniel is one of those Bible character when I read verse 2 that, that jumps out, and all knowledge. And if I have faith that can move mountains, look at this faith, and that could move mountains, and people look up to you and look at this, and but have not love, I am nothing. So when you say love is a verb, not necessarily, because you could do a lot of action in the name of love, but yet it's not love. According to this text, it's a disposition before it becomes an action. So let me just read in verse 3. And I know some of you are thinking about this. Yes, come on. Think with me. Process this with me. As we look at it biblically, it says, if I give all I possess to the poor. Wow. Sacrificial, in a sense. Giving everything and surrender my body to the flames. Wow. Martyrdom. Look at all of these extremes, but I have not love. That means it's possible for me to do all of those things, but yet not love. That means, what's the application? He says, I gain nothing according to him. So that means it's possible to do a lot of things in the name of love, but yet not really possessing love. A good example of this, just like I've alluded last Sunday, is this. Sometimes we serve in church in the name of love because we think we're doing it for the Lord, but actually not because we're doing it for ourselves. And sometimes when that's why you see people like you're serving the Lord, you're going to church in the name of love, and it seems like an act of love, but yet you could go home and what? Verbally abuse your wife, verbally abuse your kids. When you look at that, how could that be possible? How could that be possible that you go die, like almost like do all of those, serve all your hearts out, but yet at the end, when you express that to the closest people around you, it's different. So it seems like it's hypocrisy, but actually you're doing an action of love, but yet not having that disposition of love. It's possible. And that is dangerous according to the Apostle Paul. Because we could, here's the tricky part in this, and this is where we need to be careful. We could express an act of love, but yet not really understanding and having the disposition of love. That's why when you continue reading, here's what he said. It's not in your verse, and it's not on your screen. Here's what it is. Verse 4, love is patient, love is kind, and then he begins to have this description. Because, look at this, because he was saying you could do all of these things, but not love. Because for Paul, here's what he said. Love, he described, this is not a definition. He described what love is. It's patient, it's kind. That means you could do all of those things that he mentioned, tongues of angels, faith like could move mountains, giving to the poor, giving all you possess, dying for people. But if you're not kind, but if you're not patient, you're boastful, you're envious, you're proud, then according to Paul, that's not love. You have done that for yourself. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. So what he was saying here, you can actually have faith that moves mountains, but you cannot forgive people. That means you don't have love. That's actually what Paul was saying here. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Wow. So Paul was giving us a picture that we could actually do a lot of things in the name of love, somehow in an action that seems to be love, but yet the disposition is not there, then it is not love. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not. That's why we have to go back to what I said last Sunday. So how would we know if you go to the source of love? Because only God could really give us this gift of love. Because John says, 1 John 4 in verse 7, love comes from God. Only by us being filled with God's love and experiencing His love, we will be able to outpour that love the way Paul is mentioning here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Any comments so far?
Wow. Well, it's a
lot. It's rich. It's a lot of processing, but it's very important for us to get this.
Yeah. Well, I guess from what you're saying, then, we cannot manufacture it.
Yeah.
Love is not something that we manufacture or we force to have. We can only get it from God. And so if we are disconnected from God, I think then we know that we won't have love if we're disconnected from God. And sometimes we think we have love, but because of the what you just mentioned.
Yeah, because we think by doing some actions.
Because of the actions that we're doing, we think we have love. But if we are not connected to God and having that relationship with Him as our source of love, then we don't have love in us.
No, and that's why when you look at chapter, again, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1 to 3, you look at all of those, speak in tongues of men, angels, speak in the tongues of men and of angels, and then you look at that, if you have gift of prophecy, can fathom all the mysteries and all knowledge and all of those, and this is like, if you look at this, Jesus has all of those, and He has done this.
Yeah.
But yet, with love.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting note because what shouts out to me is I gain nothing.
Yeah.
Like we do all of these things
For nothing.
and it's nothing. So I guess the wise thing to do is instead of focusing on the action of love, I guess what we need to focus on is really being connected to the source of love. Because if we're connected to the source of love, love just flows out from us. And it's not something we force to happen. It happens,
And now if you go back to what he said here, then if it is all about you, then it is not love. Number 2, how would you know it's all about you? I'm doing this in the guise of love, but actually it's to feed my insecurities.
That's right.
That's why when we're acting and giving to people, is that just to feed your insecurities or to elevate your position in the community? Or it's really done from that disposition of love? Second is this, not only that also when we have done something and we begin to look at other people and look down at them because they're not doing what we're doing, so that's not love, that's pride.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, that's the two seesaw. Either you're gonna be in these insecurities, or you're gonna do it because you're proud. And here's the manifestation of that. Either you're gonna have self pity, or you're gonna be self-righteous. And that's why when we do things, if we know it is done out of love, then you're not looking for any accolade. You're not looking for any praise. You're not looking for anything. Actually, because it's a disposition, you're just doing it is because you have experienced the love that God has given you. So the same love that you have experienced, you're pouring out to other people. You don't care if you get recognized. You don't care if people say thank you. You don't. Because it's love.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm thinking, not that those actions are wrong. I hope that you don't get that. I hope that's not what we're.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying don't do good things.
Good.
Don't,
Yeah, and it's not for us as people to judge other people's actions and say, oh, that person is doing that because they're insecure, whatever. It's really between them and God.
Yes,
it's
not our place.
It's between you and God. And I think the main point of this
The main point of
encouragement
this
is
actually,
to look at ourselves.
it's a self-reflection. This is not you looking at other people and now thinking, that person actually, she has done that because
Yeah.
really it's not out of
Oh,
love.
if you're thinking that way right now, just
You have to repent.
You
Actually,
just
you're
have
thinking
to
about
repent.
other people.
Uh-huh.
That's not the point. It's about us. It's a personal reflection. Paul was saying here, if I, and again, he's using this as, let's say, third person in a sense. Is that what correct?
First person.
First person. But he was saying but he's speaking to the people, but yet he's using his example. So I think, but he was saying this for us to reflect, not to look at other people. So this is we have to be careful. So when I studied this, I was like, Lord, wow. Lord, I have done all of these things. Did I do all of these things because I love you? Because I just responded out of my insecurity, or responded this because out of my pride. Because that's why he says fails. So look at this, where there
responded out of
pressure from people. So all of this, that's why he mentioned this on this, does not boast, not proud. Look at this. It does not envy. Am I doing that because I'm envious? Is boast or proud? Look at that. So because that's the self-seeking. Look at that. It is not rude. It's not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. So it's more a self-reflection, personal reflection, not looking at people. So this is important. That's why at the end, and I'm going to jump because we need to pray. He says here at the very end, and now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of this is love. Yeah. The greatest. That means in the very core of this, faith is good, hope, but love. Because John says in 1 John chapter 4, God is love. Wow. I think this is it's something that we should consider, prayerfully consider, really. And as we examine, and going back to this whole Valentine's Day, let me just give this example to us. And again, being an example of this lady love is all about. Saint Valentine, as we celebrate that last Sunday, I think we got lost. Let me just go give this. And I'm not, please, I just want to clear this. I'm not anti-Valentine's Day. But sometimes I'm careful because as a believer, do we really know what we're celebrating? I think that's the question. And if we do, then praise God. If we're not, then I think we should know. So he is a saint, of course. He's a Christian minister who was martyred, actually, because Emperor Claudius III Gothicus, gave this edict because there was a war going on, that he wanted all the young men to postpone marriage and enlist in his army. So then he said that if not, then of course it's going to be dealt with some severe consequences. But this Christian minister, here's what he did. He was martyred for this because he married those who wanted to be married in spite of the threat of death from the Roman emperor. So that's why he was called, it was that love, is because his love to serve the people that causes him his life. It's not because he gave some chocolates and some jewelries and all of those kind of stuff. If you do that, praise God. Do it. If you do it for your wife, great. Right? But if you don't have the money to buy those, don't. Because that's not what we're celebrating here. This person, this minister, went out of his way to serve his community. And in the process, he got killed. To marry those young men who wanted to get married within, going against the edict of the emperor not to get married is because there's a war and they have to enlist. That's the context of what we have celebrated last Sunday.
I didn't know that. That's new to me. That's news to me. Yeah, wow. But,
It's just, we just need to know. And going back to this, it was that expression of love for him. And knowing that he might be killed in the process.